Okay, so we want to go ahead and get started?
Yes.
Good deal. So, welcome to the May OpenStack Meetup. Out of curiosity, who was here for the last meetup in April? Okay, cool. So a lot of first timers. Good deal. The goal of the meetup is obvious. It's what we've just been doing here. It's meeting our peers. It's telling stories, learning from each other, and growing the OpenStack community here in San Antonio. I'm sure most of you know the story. Rackspace is one of the main founders of OpenStack. I'm actually with Canonical, and we sit in that category as well, supporting Ubuntu, providing Ubuntu OpenStack release, and supporting it. Rainya set up a Twitter handle.
I'm about to go tweet.
Oh, you're going to tweet?
I'm going to go tweet.
So it's at SA OpenStackers. Please follow it. We'll provide updates on upcoming meetups, important news about OpenStack or events, anything that probably Rainya feels she wants to express. and then if you are live tweeting, it's hashtag SA OpenStack. You guys know how Twitter works. This is us. I'm not so good at Twitter. The next meetup is, we're shooting for June 25th, location TBD. We're looking at UTSA probably September, October timeframe in the fall, after I guess new students come through and rush is over and rooms open up again. Carlos is nodding. Carlos is setting it up for us. And then Rainya and myself, we're going to have a conversation with Geekdom here in the coming weeks to see if we can book a space there. They're usually pretty open to technical groups coming in and meeting, and it'd be nice to pick up some additional SA OpenStackers there. And then the subject is really based on your feedback. We had conversations last time around DevStack, and a lot of people were interested in how to deploy DevStack. What is it? It's one of the fastest ways to get OpenStack deployed in a laptop or in a virtual environment. And so we talked about doing like a workshop on deploying DevStack. We also talked about maybe doing an OpenStack 101 for anybody who's just getting their feet wet with OpenStack, deep diving into Tron and Nova and Swift and projects. And is my voice kind of coming and going?
A little bit.
Like this?
Yes.
Okay.
We're talking. With your
Yeah.
hands.
It's actually surprising the second you do this. Okay, sorry about that. So we were looking for your feedback, and Rainya, you're gonna send out a.
I'll do something.
Okay.
I'll do something.
Okay. Cool. And then I'm sure we can find speakers or anybody necessary for that. This is the agenda for today. We're going to do an OpenStack Developer Summit recap. The interesting thing about OpenStack Developer Summit is there were a lot of different tracks. It was actually really big. There's about 4,500 people there. So it's a different experience for everybody. My experience was I was in the conference room a lot. I was meeting with a lot of telcos, service providers, and then when I was down on the trade show floor. It blew my mind that there's an actual trade show at OpenStack Summit. I remember walking around and there's little booths and everybody has their banners and their giveaway, and Dell's like, talk to us, and right next to them is HP. Now everybody has their little perimeter booth inside of their booth where they can beckon people in and do demos. And then after that, Matt Van Winkle is going to provide a talk on the state of the OpenStack operator, and then you're also going to provide kind of your version of a recap on OpenStack. And then I'm curious, who else attended OpenStack Atlanta? If you guys, if there's any stories that you want to tell, or any like bullets that you want to provide, things that we don't cover, feel free. I'm happy to.
You will be forced. It's not optional.
See, I'm the nice guy. Rainya's the enforcer. So OpenStack Summit. So I mentioned it's 4,500 people. It was surreal. It's surreal to me how big it's become. Going to the keynotes, it's an unbelievable. It's just like any other trade show. right? It's pretty crazy. There were a few announcements made by the OpenStack Foundation during the initial keynotes. One of which is a virtual marketplace that they set up. It's at openstack.org/marketspace. And what it is an area for operators, consumers of OpenStack. I guess in this case even developers, because it's got drivers and various consultants that you can work with. But it's a place to go where you can see everybody involved in the ecosystem in one location. I think in the past, if you wanted to find a trainer, you Google OpenStack training is what you did, and then Rantis is probably paying for top billing, and Rackspace is in there. And now it's a location where everybody's in there. So whether it's training or Ubuntu is in the distros, and there's Red Hat, SUSE, and it's everybody together, and people can help people make intelligent decisions on the direction that they want to go with their cloud. It wasn't just a virtual marketplace. That was a big theme of the summit. This is actually the banner right at the beginning when you walk into the trade show floor. It truly was a marketplace. Canonical, we had a 20 by 20 over on the right-hand side, right next to Rackspace, who had a 20 by 20. So did Dell and Solidfire. Everybody doing demos. This is a Nebula booth right here. HP was over there, and it was pretty incredible to go up to each of the vendors and look at the latest, greatest things that they were doing. This is actually our booth right here. We're demoing what we call the Orange Box, which is a small cluster of about 10 servers, microservers. They're Intel NUCs, networked together, and then we're demoing Juju, which is a workload deployment tool to deploy OpenStack. The other big announcement is Super User Magazine. The show itself was actually all about the super user. You saw these little caricatures of the various super users in the community, all over the place. Kind of the stars and the early adopters made into cartoons. And so they put out a magazine that basically, instead of being directed towards the developers, directed towards the users. It's use cases, white papers, everything that a user needs in order to help learn more about OpenStack, and then also sell upstream within their organization. These were some of the super users that were up and speaking. This is a small sample. These were some of the ones that were the most notable to me. Disney gave a fantastic talk, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Wells Fargo being a big bank, it was pretty incredible the amount of information that he was providing. Even his competitors, because I know firsthand there were several other banks there in the audience, and that's what's incredible about the OpenStack community is the ability to share how they're using OpenStack, what it's doing for them internally, the drivers behind it. AT&T is running enormous cloud. Of course, Rackspace spoke, and Time Warner Cable as well. A lot of telcos and a lot of digital content providers. I think it was the year of the Star Wars analogy. There were multiple talks, multiple involving Star Wars. Our founder, Mark Shuttleworth, he got up and he was doing a little Lego Star Wars play. So there were several talks with it. Primarily OpenStack and really open source contributors were obviously aligned with the Rebel Alliance, right? That group kind of getting together to fight the power. That means that obviously the closed source cloud providers, they're the bad guys. So that's probably, but the thing is what was interesting though. So I joke, and that was the talk, is that I could only imagine them talking about Amazon and VMware, people with thousands of developers that they could just throw directly at whatever proprietary software they're trying to provide. But the thing is a lot of those providers are actually part of the community now. So what you're seeing is just a ton of converts. We're working, we as in Canonical are working with VMware, right, to help them get their SDN, Nicira code into OpenStack. We're working with Microsoft to make sure that like SQL and SharePoint, things that you never would have associated with OpenStack in the past, function well on top of OpenStack. We're integrating CentOS, and so the thing is with them all joining, it kind of raises a little concern with me, because they're basically taking they're taking their proprietary plugins and they're adding them to OpenStack. But I think as long as it's user driven, and some of the users, the super users I showed, are some of the biggest contributors to OpenStack today. So I think as long as that's the case, that we don't need to worry about, Oracle. I threw Red Hat in there, but that's just as cheap stack. VMware, some of the big banks, the people that are converting that I wouldn't think have converted in the past. And so we don't need to worry about the proprietary stuff as long as everything is kept open. The key takeaways that I took from the talks were speed of innovation. Disney talked about, they actually showed a diagram very similar where typically this is a Venn diagram that shows speed, quality, price. Where they overlap is the sweet spot where you want to be with your IT infrastructure being an example. And what he instead of speed, he put fast. He said he wants fast with an extra fast pizza with an extra helping of fast, right? He says that with enough fast, he can iterate quickly and deliver quality. With enough fast, then he can drive down the price by being nimble and competitive and changing rapidly. So he says forget this. The new paradigm is fast, and that's what OpenStack delivers to users. Again, it's learning from the community, converts being there. And then I would recommend, again, this is a selfish plug, but it's probably one of the best keynotes that I've ever seen, is Mark Shuttleworth's talk. And he's nonstop, he dropped bombs the whole time for about 20 minutes, and it was pretty cool, along with the Windows integration, supporting CentOS, using our tools, supporting Windows using our tools. So, now is the time to put in your travel requests to get out to Paris for the K-Release. 6 months is going to go really, really fast, and then at the last minute you're going to try to scramble to get out to Paris. So I know that I'll be there. Hopefully I'll see you guys there too. So with that said, I'll hand you over to Matt. You ready for your talk? I'll unplug my mic.
While we're doing the transition, and I'm sorry for the people listening on the video that you're not going to hear this really well. Try to come next time. Are there any questions or are there any? Start thinking about the questions that you have about the Summit experience, about OpenStack, areas. We're going to have extra time afterwards to talk and mingle, and so also. VDub is pretty good at Matt Ben Winkle we call him VDub. He's VDub as a service. So, and he is our ops manager, and I should stand up and introduce him properly, but I'm not going to. He's our ops manager here for the public cloud data plane, so he's responsible for all of the hypervisors and all of the software in virtual instances that run the actual OpenStack cloud here at Rackspace. He's also what I kind of refer to if Troy Troman, who is the former VP of Engineering here at Rackspace, referred to himself as the spiritual leader of OpenStack at Rackspace. I like to call VDub the voice of the operator for OpenStack, and not just at Rackspace, but increasingly for a large portion of the community, whether he wants to or not. And so he's going to recap his experience. So as you're going through, at the end I'll share a little bit about my experience, which is more developer focused. But I'd really like for the second half of it to be more of a conversation, if at all possible. Maybe a louder conversation on camera so that other people can benefit from it. So keep that in mind as you're going through. And I think I'm done stalling. Yes?
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Press the green button. How many engineers does it take to run a PowerPoint presentation?
Alright, cool. Alright.
It's the same thing when we do video conferencing rooms. Smartest people I know cannot figure out how to dial a virtual room with the VC software.
It's hard.
Well, okay, so as they mentioned, my name is Ben Rodrigue, in these walls, just about everyone calls me BW, so that's why I put it in there. My role as a manager of cloud engineering, as Rainya said, principally responsible for the data plane, so I have a very large fleet of servers all over the world that keep me up at night. But I've done all, I mean, for lack of a better term, I probably am the closest thing we have to a chief operator for the public cloud. We have several teams that do that, so I can't really claim full credit, but somehow my phone rings a lot. So the other reason that I'm here speaking with you today is since about, well, really late last year, but heavily since March, I've been working somehow with the user committee and several folks in the foundation all around the engagement of operators in the process of making OpenStack better. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. And then Twitter handle if you want to follow me. Picture with the... Yeah. My wife does not think that looks like me at all. She vetoed it. It's still on my Twitter profile for fun. Anyway, so we're going to talk about kind of three areas: super users. So you're going to hear a lot of overlap with the last presentation. Super users, the Rebel Alliance, a little bit of that, and then kind of where we go from here and what's going on with operators in general. So the very first talk of the session was, as it usually is, with Jonathan Bryce, the executive director of the foundation, speaking, and his whole talk was largely centered around the concept of the super user. Here was a quote that he had. I won't read it to you, but I'll let you guys have a chance to dig through it.
You should read it.
Okay, I'll read it for the video. These users are getting involved and they're helping to drive OpenStack. They're helping to change their businesses and they're really making a difference in the industries that they play in. So it's not just about how these folks were using OpenStack in their companies, but what they're doing to their overall industries, what they're doing to OpenStack, and how they're basically trying to change the world. It was really a neat tie-in from a lot of the major keynotes. I don't know if they really coordinated it ahead of time, but as a role from Jonathan and Troy, there was a lot of overlap, and Mark the next day. It was really, really interesting. All right, so we saw a brief clip of this earlier. The biggest output of the super user effort is an actual super user magazine, they call it, but it's a website. I definitely recommend everyone here go check it out. There's quite a few articles, there's some how-tos, there's some rundowns of how certain people are using OpenStack today. There's spotlights on super users specifically, and there's more to come. I actually got to sit in a meeting Wednesday at lunch with the editorial board for this, and kind of talk about where they want to go with it, and the kinds of content they want to put up there, and kind of the goals behind it. And there was a mixture of folks from the foundation and folks out there running OpenStack, so it was really good. So here's a little more detail if you want to follow up. I put all the links together at the end, so I'll leave that slide up for a minute so you don't have to try to type fast. But if you go to the About page, there's a link to the super user mailing list you can register for if you so deem yourself one. You can find out how to submit content to the site and possibly even advise and or help out on the editorial board. So it's a good place to find a way to get involved. All right, so we'll speak about the Rebel Alliance. He was not kidding when there was quite a bit of Star Wars sort of motif in the week. Kicked off by another Troy Tillman, as Rainya put it, spiritual leader of OpenStack at Rackspace. Troy was around when we started OpenStack back in Austin with a very small number of people, helped launch the public cloud, actually led the group that launched the public cloud, built on OpenStack, and is still around today, challenging at the same time. So he brought up this, the whole title of his talk was a bunch of rebels or a rebel alliance, something along those lines. And lots of Star Wars pictures, which was funny because he just went on right after the Disney guy spoke, so we're still waiting to see what happens there. But he made a lot of good points. But one of the biggest ones was we're not there yet. All we've really done is won the right to compete. We've made OpenStack a valid option, but by no means have we beat the other people at what they're doing. And he went on to talk a lot about how the only way we do that is by working together. Because what we have to build is a global scale cloud, is the way he phrased it. In other words, until a large customer or a large application can deploy across multiple providers in multiple places around the world in a way that no proprietary closed source provider could allow them to do, we still have a lot of work to do. Is the best way I can summarize what he was saying. All right, so to get there, he started talking about some of the mechanics of it, and kind of the ones that got a lot of looks like that in the room. Were the dev core project, and then the side of that was RefStack. Look, dev core, put very simply, is a way to define what really is core to OpenStack. So if you were a person who downloads and installs and runs an integrated release, like if you went and picked up Icehouse right now, what are the things that should or should not be in that integrated release? Now there was a good deal of discussion around that core. There should always be a thriving ecosystem of other projects, just like, with Linux, when it came out, it was primarily a kernel with some, basic utilities around it. Over time, this ecosystem evolved, and things like Apache, MySQL, and those kinds of things became much more critical, and in some cases could be argued are core today, right? So that's kind of the same model he talked about. Now, along with dev core, as far as what's in the core of OpenStack, there's going to have to be some rigor around, can you really call your implementation an OpenStack implementation? I think that's another part of the dev core project. It's a set of standards, a set of guidelines that say, if you're running OpenStack, and you really want to say you're running OpenStack, you kind of have to check off these boxes. And look, even Rackspace, with what I learned last week, was probably the largest implementation, definitely public cloud-wise, if not one of the largest, period, has a few things to fix. To help with that comes RefStack, right? So this is the tooling in which you're able to test and upload and give information and help all this come about. All right, so he led from there back into a similar conversation that Jonathan had around the expansion of how people contribute to the community. It tied very nicely into the whole concept of the super user and the operator. But he centered on two key aspects of the OpenStack community today: trust and contribution. And he called that out specifically. Now he went on to say, though, that there's more than just adding code when it comes to contribution. And I think this is where you're actually seeing quite a bit of a shift very recently in the way that the community is organizing the opportunity to not only contribute, but to get credit for contributing and vehicles for contribution. And we'll talk about those in just a second. But his main point was, it's going to take developers, it's going to take the operators, people running OpenStack, it's going to take the end users who actually talk to the APIs, the people who maybe never install OpenStack themselves, but are actually deploying applications on some cloud somewhere. And it's going to take them in a very, very cooperative way. He had another drawing that talked about the traditional model where the deployers and operators and users just throw requirements over the fence. And when I talk about the first few operator meetups here in a second, that's kind of how it started out. The cranky old operator sitting in the room talking about how the devs get it all wrong. But it's getting better. And the idea is that, look, it's going to take users who understand that it's hard, very hard, Chris will vouch for this, to implement it. And developers need to understand the pain of having your phone ring at 3 o'clock in the morning because it broke, right? And ultimately, operators have to be very empathetic to the developers. Look, this started out as a very developer-driven community in the project, and a lot of cool things to go build for the sake of building them. But now people are running it, and running it in large and very profitable ways. And those people are going to gain a larger and larger voice. And it's key that the users and the operators approach the developers with needs, but in a very empathetic way. The fact that this kind of balance of power has shifted a little bit, and we still all have to work together to get it done. All right, so let's talk about some of the practical things that have been going on relative to the operator community. This will take us back to around the March timeframe. I actually got involved. It was an email that got dropped. How many are all the operators in mailing list by any chance? Developer, and you work with members of the user committee, works at CERN over in Switzerland, smashing atoms together. So they have quite a big OpenStack footprint. He said, hey, I think we should have an operators mini summit. And so to give you some context, several of the projects, Nova, for example, have one in Utah, but several of the main projects had small, they call them mini summits, mid-cycle. So somewhere between Hong Kong and Atlanta, they got a group together specifically to work on things. The design summit's a really neat summit, we have to call it. It's really three things in one. It's a design summit for the developers to talk about what they're going to build in the next three or 6 months. It's a conference, as you would expect conferences to be, with keynotes and speakers and trade shows and free stuff and food and parties and blah, blah, blah. And now, as of Atlanta, it's also an operators summit. So we'll talk about that in a second. There's actually sessions centered just around people running OpenStack class. All right. So these mini summits. So Tim says we should do this for operators. And a few of us said, hey, that's a great idea. And next thing you know, about 8 of us were planning this little get-together. So it happened in March. It was pretty small. I think we invited about 70 people just because we didn't know how it was going to go. We put a few guardrails around it. We got about 50. We had a little bit of feedback about it. Should have been more widely advertised, and we're taking that into account. But it was actually really good. It was at eBay's headquarters out in San Jose. It was 1 day long, and like I said, it was a bunch of people like me sitting in a room talking about the challenges and joys of running OpenStack. And it started out kind of the typical, everything's broken, everything's bad, it keeps me up at night, I don't like being an operator anymore, my kids don't know me. But we with the help of some folks in the community and some of the board members that were there to kind of facilitate, we pulled out a lot of good data. It wasn't exactly the data we had planned, like we had high hopes of actually submitting a blueprint before we left and doing all kinds of cool stuff. But a couple of key things did come out of it. One, if you want to, actually I have this link later, it's just a wiki, it's an Etherpad of all the things discussed. You can go see all the material still out there, easily accessible. But the first thing was, we want to change what's going to happen at the Atlanta Summit. This was 2 months out, mind you. And the change was, the operators said we want to have sessions very similar to what the developers have, where it's not someone on a stage telling me how they implemented Neutron. It's us talking about what goes on when implementing Neutron, and having a conversation. How did you do this? And how did you do that? This is what I did, and those kinds of things. And so that was a big ask. Also, let me show you this. So we did. Tom Fifield, who's I'll mention, is he's the community manager for operators, right? So if you don't know that name, go to the OpenStack.org website. There's a profile for him. His whole job is to make the operator user community happy. I don't want his job ever, but that's his whole job. Anyway, so he worked in got an extra room, worked in some extra sessions. So this is actually all the stuff on Monday that was specifically just operators getting together to discuss running OpenStack, the challenges thereof. This one was neat. To ask the devs are really neat. They literally had every PTL and several members of the technical committee in the room. And it was a great way to put faces and names together and have a really kind of high-level conversation. And Friday, when the conference was over, but the design system was still going on, we had a whole day of just other sessions. I actually got to lead the one, issues at scale. Scale alone was a fun word. Because I said, how many people scale is running a few hundred nodes, and a bunch of hands went up. How many, actually I think tens of nodes, and a bunch of hands went up. And how many people, your struggling scale are hundreds, and hands went up. And how many thousands, and 3 or 4, and I think I was in the tens of thousands. But, so it's interesting to hear the stories from a different perspective. And then several others. And then again, all of the stuff in those sessions was captured in Etherpad. So if you go to the wiki for OpenStack, all of the summit sessions, including all the design sessions, all the Etherpads are there. But this is another great source of information if you were not in Atlanta to find out what was going on. Right? But we also did this wacky thing at the request of the operators to, can we get a session that's operators and the developers specifically around each project? And believe it or not, it took. I sadly was not able to go to the Nova one because I had to get to the airport, and it was like 3 o'clock on Friday, but I was looking at the notes, and there's actually lots of good stuff in there. So this is off the schedule as well. It's literally in the Nova Design Summit. It's the DevOps session. So
very successful. We're still trying to figure out how to make that better going forward. And then this is specifically that one session, just to kind of show you. I've got that linked at the end as well. All right, so there was changes to this Atlanta Summit itself, centered around operators. Now this is all on top of, additionally, Randy was talking about this earlier, there was also an operators track within the actual main conference, right? So, you know, if you look at all the talks that were being given, they're all color-coded. There were ones for like business, and ones for, you know, public clouds, and ones for this and that. And then there was actually an operators track. And we worked really hard. And I can't say we, because in the middle of all this, I got asked to be a track chair. We worked really hard to make sure that the talks were sales pitches, that they were, you know, useful. And did anyone go to any of them that was at the summit? And Rainya was talking about them. Did you guys make any operator ones? Do you know for sure?
I think we did.
Okay. So we worked really hard to make sure that it was useful stuff, right? And so that was useful. But on top of all the stuff at the summit, this other really interesting thing happened. We were in San Jose talking, we said, man, features are coming through like crazy. And then the process today is, you know, someone like Chris, who's a developer, I have to pick on him because he works for Rackspace, you know, goes and submits a blueprint for what he wants to add to OpenStack. And it's over this thing called, I'm blank, Launchpad. And it's this like document over there, and people kind of comment on it. Finally someone says, yeah, huh?
The webpage.
Webpage, yeah. No. So people comment on it, finally someone says, okay, it's good enough, let's go. So then they start writing code. And as soon as they start writing code, it goes into a review system, people are looking at the code, they're commenting on the code, they're saying, yes, no, you can merge this, go fix this, go move that white space, put a period here, what the hell are you thinking? All those things go on, and eventually the code gets merged, and then Rainya's team is over here deploying codes. They pull down updated code from OpenStack trunk, they merge it in with some stuff here at Rackspace, they roll it out to the regions that we have, and all of a sudden something breaks. And I'm like, whoa. And it's not bad, I mean, it's not like a problem, it's a feature that was designed and pushed out to something we did not expect, and we had no way to know it was coming. And so that was kind of the center of it. And it wasn't just people at Rackspace saying this. This was in this operator session. It said, man, we wish we could catch it way back at the beginning and have a way as an operator to say, hang on, have you thought about X? Have you thought about Y? Or hey, that won't work, or hey, do this. And so we said it'd be great if we could take the blueprints themselves and put them in the same code review system that the actual OpenStack code goes through. Because it's already geared towards people coming in and commenting and voting up, voting down, and things. This was a Monday. I kid you not, it was a Monday. Thursday afternoon, the same week, the PTL at the time of Nova sends an email out to the dev list and says, hey, we were chatting at the mini summit. We were thinking it'd be really cool if we put the blueprints in a Garrett so people could review them like they do code. And about half of us that had been in San Jose said, yes, please, right now. And it literally took like 2 weeks. It was done. So this has been going on for a good couple months, probably. It's a month and a half.
Yeah, a month and a half.
Right.
It's about
And
4 weeks before Summit started.
About 4 weeks, yeah.
And most of the other projects have now picked it up as well, or at least a number of them have.
Yes. So jump slides because you bring it up. Yes. So it's been moderately successful. I think it needs tweaking. Everything does, but it's being picked up by the other projects as well. So again, you go to the Garrett review system. There's one specifically I'm talking about is Nova specs. Then there's actually a whole wiki page on how you submit blueprints now with the new process, how they get reviewed, all that kind of stuff. And then, like Chris said, I heard of Oslo Neutron Triple O at the summit for sure. I think Glance may even be as well. So several projects are working on it, right?
Talk to the Barbican guys about it too.
Yeah, and we're trying to get all the new projects coming down the pipe to jump on board as well. So definitely, this is key, right? So if you use OpenStack and don't write code, and you think you have trouble with it from time to time, this is where you should be. Now it's hard because if you're running a cloud, you're working days and nights and days and nights, sometimes without end. But the more people you get there working on that, the better. So that's basically what I mean. The opportunity's been given. There have been very active operators in this already, commenting. I actually had my first commit ever because I got to do a modification to the actual template. But there's not that many operators in the commenting, right? So it's great that it's working, but we want more. All right, so one of the things that got talked about at this particular summit was not really changes to the way the user committee works, but some sort of addendums, if you will. Is everyone familiar with the user committee?
No.
Okay.
I don't know that we have time to go into live
Okay.
video right now. Sorry.
No, basically, the idea is there's 3 key people that do the user committee work, and mostly center around the user survey and looking at data from all the companies running OpenStack. That's a lot of work in and of itself. They wish to augment that with working groups of various types, be it public cloud, be it enterprise. I mean, there's lots of different conversations about what those groups would work like. The idea is that those groups would go comment on blueprints together, look at the feedback in the Etherpads from the different sessions, try to figure out how to turn into something useful going forward, and all those things. So stay tuned. You'll see more of that stuff popping up between now and Paris. All right, so the last thing kind of in the operator vein that I have is we're working really hard right now to have the next operator mini summit right here, probably in these 2 rooms. In August, which is good for you. I already used to South Texas. I'm not sure how the rest of the folks coming in are going to deal with that, but oh well. Don't have the exact date. We're actually going back and forth about a couple different ones, so stay tuned for details, but it will get advertised. Right? So keep your ears open. Be here.
Is everybody invited?
I think we're going to do a pretty broad invitation. I told them we could hold a couple hundred here easily, so we'll see how it goes. And then finally, we're looking forward to Paris already. I was in the room and they said you can have Monday and Tuesday, so I know that there will be off-summit sessions like we had this time. What will be in them is being evolved right now between now and Paris. But we're just going to keep building on the things we've been doing around operators for the last few months. With that, there's all the links. If you want to ping me somehow, message me on Twitter or something, I can actually give you the text version if you want to write them on
You're gonna email them to me?
I can,
there. I'll email
yeah.
them to Rainya, and Rainya will put them on the website.
Yep.
Put them on the website.
Yep.
Like I said. And any other questions?
Let me know about the thing in August, and we'll also get that out to the. We've got about 150 San Antonio OpenStackers.
All right,
I can
so
send it
throw
out
a mic,
to.
I'll put you on the spot. We may need someone to help us with food. Just saying, if another company jumped in and helped us with
It
food.
can be done. It can be done.
All right. Excellent. Well, then I'll turn the mic over to someone.
Here's me. So big round of hands, big round of applause. And we're going to go ahead and end the video.
Good.
Thank you all very much in video land. Please try to make it in person. These are better with real people.